What's going on? So, I want to talk a little bit about macros and how to calculate the calories that you need to either lose weight, maintain weight, or add weight to your frame. So, if you are someone that doesn't have a ton of muscle mass, even if you are a little bit overweight, I would just focus on building muscle. So, eating at about maintenance and just learning how to train harder, to train more effectively, and to train more consistently so that we're building up your metabolism. Muscle is going to be the most metabolically active tissue. So the more muscle you have, the more calories that you're going to burn at rest. And so that's a huge thing. If you don't have a ton of muscle mass and you try to get super lean, you're going to have to get your calories so low and you're just going to end up feeling like shit down the road. So initially, want to focus on building some muscle mass, regardless of who you are. Even if you have, a little bit of extra weight to lose, want to probably stick at about maintenance. So one way we can kind of determine the amount of calories you need per day is you take your body weight. So pull up, let's say you weigh 200 pounds and you want to maintain that weight. Then we're going to multiply that by about 15. So about 3,000 calories per day is what you need to kind of maintain if you're at about 200 pounds. And this can depend, whether you have like you're 200 pounds and super fat versus 200 pounds and, pretty muscular. But anyway, that's a good rule of thumb. And then, anything below 15 is going to be a deficit. So, generally 12 is a good place to start, getting you in a solid deficit of 2,400 calories. If you really have a lot of fat to lose, you might want to go 10, about 2,000. If you want to gain weight, you can go up to 20. So 4,000 calories per day. So that's a good way to kind of measure that. And then also, if you are, let's say you're 250 pounds, right? You had a lot of fat, but let's say you're 250 pounds, but your ideal weight, what your next big target is 200 pounds. So then we'll say 200 times 1 gram of protein per day. So you're trying to get about 200 grams of protein. And this can range between 0.8, so 160, and 1.2, so 240. So 160 to 240 grams of protein is kind of where you need to be. And I'd say if you got a lot of weight to lose, I'd go on the upper end and start with getting 240 grams of protein per day. And then, over time, as you start to lose some of that weight, you might be able to drop that number down. But making sure we get enough protein is going to be huge when it comes to making sure that we're satiated, making sure that we actually have that feeling of fullness. And so we're not, always hungry and then eating a ton of foods that have high amounts of calories from fat and carbohydrates. So we always want to prioritize our protein first, making sure that, we're eating that towards the beginning of the meal. If you make some steak and potatoes, try to eat the majority of that steak first before you start shoveling in the potatoes. So making sure we get that protein in first is going to make sure that our satiety levels and our ghrelin and leptin hormones are in check so that we're not over consuming. And then if you're still hungry after, then you have those carbohydrates to kind of throw down on. But what happens is, if you eat all your carbs and fats first, a bunch of bread and butter and things like that, then you might get kind of full temporarily, and then you don't eat your protein, and then you're full for like an hour, but then an hour later, that hunger comes back with a vengeance, and then, usually people aren't going to be eating high protein foods. And they'll go back to something high in carbs and fats. So really want to prioritize protein, and then making sure, you're getting good quality fats. So, getting some solid fats from like butter and eggs, olive oil, things like that. I try to avoid the ultra processed seed oils as much as possible. but in moderation, as long as you're in that energy balance, eating fewer calories or the same amount of calories as you're burning, then it's not going to be that problematic. It's usually, when you're eating in this heavy surplus and you're eating a lot of processed foods that have a lot of canola oil, rapeseed oil, grapeseed oil, sunflower oil, things like that, corn oil, palm oil. We want to kind of avoid those. General rule of thumb. Here and there, it's probably fine, but those are one thing I'm looking at. And then carbohydrates, those are going to be in alignment with how you move. So if you are not training super hard, you're just going on some walks, you're just kind of trying to maintain some level of decent fitness, then you really don't need that many carbohydrates. If you're sprinting, if you are doing stuff with high anaerobic activity, a lot of HIIT workouts, you're focusing on strength, you're really building some muscle, some hypertrophy, then you're really going to want to have those carbohydrates in your diet. Those are going to be like jet fuel. They're going to burn fast. You're going to be able to use those for energy. So carbs aren't the enemy. Fats aren't the enemy. But we got to be intentional with them. And someone that, isn't burning a ton of calories doesn't really need a ton of carbohydrates and a ton of fat. But our fat, if we take that too low, it's going to mess up our hormones and we're going to probably feel like shit. If you take the carbs too low, you're also going to feel like shit. Temporarily keeping the carbs pretty low can actually be a great tool. Like maybe tapping into some ketogenic diet for a couple weeks can be a good tool to kind of get you reset. But it's, in my opinion, not a sustainable long-term approach. So we always want to think about sustainability too, right? So, things that you can carry out for a long period of time without burning out. And I think that, a mixed diet is definitely the way to go, having some flexibility, being able to eat some treats here and there and some things that you really enjoy. But a thing people think is like, to get fit, I can't eat pizza, I can't eat burgers, I can't eat tacos, things like that. And, if you're just getting them from, fast food restaurants, probably not the best thing because there's going to be a lot of extra calories and just additives and things that are hyper palatable that, make you want to overeat. But if you take that extra time and you make a burger from scratch, then that's going to be a way cleaner option. If you use some like sourdough toast and you're just keeping those calories lower and the protein higher. So another thing with protein is, generally, if we can keep, this is a good rule of thumb, especially if you're kind of new to it, trying to get about 10 grams of protein for every 100 calories you consume. That puts your protein calories around 40% of your total calories, which some people might think is high. But if you have a lot of weight to lose, that's going to be one of the most powerful ways that you can sustainably lose some weight and not have to track your calories super rigorously. So those are some tools that I like to use for sure. But at the end of the day, sustainability, no macronutrients should be, eradicated completely from your diet. Sure, you can leverage some tools here and there for short term, but we want to have a healthy relationship with food. That's ultimately what we're going for, right? We want to have a healthy relationship with the foods that we're consuming and, the foods that are a little more off limits on a regular basis, being able to enjoy those foods and then coming back and not like allowing it to completely fuck up all your progress. So make sure you follow this channel for more and comment below on whatever videos that you'd like me to cover or topics that you'd like me to cover moving forward.